All right, first question. If I do moderate intensity cardio for many hours in a row, do I risk increasing oxidative stress? Are there ways to counteract the negative effects? So any kind of exercise does increase inflammation and oxidative stress in the short term. During the exercise, yes, your body has, higher blood pressure, higher blood sugar, higher amounts of inflammation. So if you just look at it in isolation, then you could say that exercise is harmful for you. But what's interesting is that after the fact, after you've stopped exercising, the inflammation and oxidative stress are lower. So you're increasing your body's endogenous antioxidant capacity. You actually lower inflammation. That's why people who exercise regularly have lower inflammation as a baseline. They have lower resting heart rates, lower blood sugar as a baseline, lower blood pressure as a baseline. So the short-term acute effect is actually beneficial in the long term, that your body in the long term does experience improved health. Now, other ways to counteract some of those negative side effects, yes, first of all, don't overtrain. So if you overtrain, then you're increasing the likelihood of getting sick, getting other negative side effects, experiencing harmful effects in terms of body composition or mental health, etc. So overtraining obviously is not beneficial, but moderate exercise, trying to progress in your training is generally beneficial. Now, overtraining does increase the risk of respiratory tract infections. So elite athletes tend to have higher risk of respiratory tract infections because of the increased risk, because of the overtraining component, especially when combined with sleep deprivation or undernourishment, etc. So if you are training a lot, then counteracting the risk of respiratory tract infections can be done with a sauna. So there's a research that people who take the sauna have lower risk of respiratory tract infections, they have better immune system functioning, they get sick less often, etc. So taking a sauna after exercise, after any form of vigorous exercise especially, can mitigate any potential risk. And it also promotes recovery. Saunas promote muscle repair, muscle recovery. They also lower inflammation, lower blood pressure in the long term. So it's a perfect combination. And there's quite interesting research that people who take the sauna while exercising, they see greater reduction in blood pressure than exercise alone. And the same with VO2 max. If you do sauna while exercising, well, not in the exact moment that you're riding a bike or doing some kettlebells in the sauna, not like that. But if you exercise and you also take the sauna regularly, then you also see increased VO2 max gains. So the small cardiorespiratory workout you get from the sauna contributes to increased VO2 max as well as a lower resting blood pressure. So yeah, it's the best combination. You exercise and you also take a sauna after the workout. It's the best recovery tool. And it also lowers your risk of inflammation or increased risk of respiratory tract infections that can come from overtraining. Next question. Have you followed any of Russell Reiter PhD research on melatonin? It's very interesting. He's 88 and researched melatonin since 1965. Yes, I am aware of that research, and it's very interesting to me. I think this concept of megadosing melatonin for the sake of anti-aging and other longevity benefits is very interesting for me. I've been a fan of melatonin myself for many years. I've tested megadoses. I've tested 10 milligrams. I've taken more than that as well. I haven't really tested the 100 or 200 milligram dose yet, but I'm definitely or probably going to try it out in the near future. So unfortunately, there's no actual clinical trials on this megadosing of melatonin, but people anecdotally have said that it has benefits for them. But obviously, it's very limited evidence, these self-reported cases. But generally, yeah, melatonin as an antioxidant, as an anti-inflammatory hormone is super interesting. I think there is quite a lot of untapped potential for like megadosing melatonin for just not sleep, but just overall metabolic health and maybe cardiovascular or brain health or other health benefits. Next question. Could you compare the top anti-aging supplement formulas like Blueprint, NOVOS or DoNotAge? Yeah, I have reviewed actually all three of them on my channel before. I've reviewed Blueprint, I've reviewed NOVOS, and I've reviewed DoNotAge as well. Now, yeah, Blueprint and NOVOS are somewhat similar. Blueprint has a lot more products than NOVOS, but generally they're like a mix of ingredients. And the DoNotAge is different because they sell individual ingredients. They don't sell mixes, they sell just the single ingredients. So obviously there's they're completely different in terms of that. My review of DoNotAge was that some of those ingredients are very good, very research-backed, like creatine, omega-3s, berberine. They have glycine and NAC, a few other good supplements. Some of them might be a bit more limited, like CERT6 or some other ones like calcium alpha ketoglutarate or resveratrol as well. But the ones that they do sell are quite high quality and third party tested, etc. Blueprint and NOVOS Core. So I made a review on Blueprint. My thoughts on Blueprint was that some of the ones are good. I liked the soft gel formula. Actually, that was the only one I would take from their stack, which had like astaxanthin and lutein and vitamin K2, etc. I wouldn't take their capsules. I wouldn't take their mix powder. And my overall rating was maybe like 3.8 or 4, I think, out of 5 for the Blueprint. So, yeah, that's my thoughts on Blueprint pretty much. The only one I would take is the soft gel. NOVOS Core, I think the NOVOS mix, the powder mix, is quite good. I would consider it like a pretty solid stack. It's a kind of on the safer end of not having any unnecessary ingredients and not having any potential ingredients that could potentially cause some negative reactions to some individuals. So it's kind of like a safe bet. Yeah, but I do think that there's a lot of untapped potential in NOVOS as well, that they don't have ingredients that have a lot of research and potential additional benefits. So they're leaving a few ingredients on the table, in my opinion. If I were to stack them, in terms of like a tier system, these three, then I think NOVOS is better than Blueprint, in my opinion. But DoNotAge, it's a different league in terms that they sell only individual ingredients, so they don't sell mixed powders. So yeah, it's kind of a pros and cons. But I am actually coming out with my own mix as well in the near future, next year. And yeah, I'm just formulating it based on what I would take and what I will take myself, and what all of the ingredients that have evidence and in their optimal doses. So both the Blueprint and NOVOS Core, they tend to miss on some of the optimal doses, which can be hard because, or is self-explanatory because it can be hard to fit all the ingredients into the mix. But what I've done actually achieve that. So yeah, it has the optimal doses and minimalistic setup. So yeah, you don't have to start taking 20 pills a day or 30 pills a day like you would do with maybe some individual ingredients. Next question. Even though you share a lot of what you do, what are the things that you do directly or that might contribute indirectly to your health that you tend to not mention? The things that give you the extra 1 to 5% of longevity and health benefits based on your subjective opinion. Yeah, well, I've always thought that one of the biggest contributors to my personal health has been intermittent fasting. So the research about intermittent fasting is that, it does help with weight loss, but it's not superior to regular calorie restriction. And when it comes to longevity, then we, can't say if it's going to make you live longer or something like that. I personally think that it certainly, at least it certainly helps me to maintain very optimal body composition year round without any effort. So I just skip a few meals, eat in a smaller window, and it just makes it easier to stick to a diet. There's some other longevity pathways that get activated with intermittent fasting, such as these AMPK and autophagy and FOXO3, etc. But we don't know whether or not it will actually contribute to maximal lifespan in humans. But personally, I do think that I'm kind of biased towards thinking that it does, at least for me. Obviously, it can also improve lipids and blood pressure and HRV and blood sugar and all these other biomarkers that can correlate to health span and longevity. So that's my opinion. And I've been doing intermittent fasting for over 10 years by now. So it's always been my go-to just because I like it. What other things I think have played a big role is I have a very strong immune system for some reason. I never really get sick. If I do get sick, then I recover super fast, and I don't get severely sick ever. I lived in a molded house for 2 decades without any symptoms. And yeah, I can, be exposed to a lot of pathogens or viruses and mold and those kind of things without even getting sick. So, I have a strong immune system. And the reason I think I have it is because I grew up in the countryside. I played in the dirt. I ate the dirt probably, I grew up with animals, farm animals, touching the animals, getting exposed to a lot of different bacteria and microbes. So that builds a strong immune system. I ate raw milk when I was a kid. I, was just in a natural environment with a lot of natural bacteria and microbes that does contribute to a stronger immune system. And, in what I see online today is quite, strange, because there's a lot of people who suffer. I have this food sensitivity, I'm allergic to that, etc., etc. Like, I'm allergic to nothing. I can eat anything. I have perfect digestion. I have, good skin health. I don't get any reactions or rashes or acne. I've never had that. So I think the reason is because I grew up with a lot of animals, a lot of dirt, a lot of soil, a lot of pollen from the whatever air, breathing in. We were surrounded by wheat fields and some other grain fields. So when they're harvesting, then there's a lot of the grain flowing everywhere. So I probably just developed a strong immune system while exposed to these kind of things. And there is research that you can improve certain allergies and sensitivities if you're microdosed or exposed to them in small amounts. But as a kid, that's where your immune system develops the most. And when you're exposed to these things in small amounts as a kid, you just develop a very strong immune system, or a very a diverse immune system, able to tolerate a lot of different environmental microbes and bacteria. Now, if I were to move to Thailand or some Australia or Africa, then yeah, I've never been exposed to those kind of bacteria there, though. So then maybe I would get sick. But in my home setting, here in this Nordic Europe, I don't get sick at all. So getting exposed to a lot of natural bacteria as a kid, obviously you can't do it retrospectively, but you can at least do that for your own kids. Don't grow kids in a sterilized environment, exposed to microplastics and household chemicals only. You want to expose them to the dirt and live animals, etc., like a dog and cat and cows and pigs and chicken, etc. So I think that those are the two things that have played a huge impact on my own health, I think. I want to take a quick break to let you know about my favorite wellness devices, which are the BoNTCHARGE red light therapy devices. You've probably seen many of your favorite longevity influencers using these red light therapy devices, but do they actually work? Yes, they do. Red light therapy has been shown to have many benefits on skin anti-aging, hormone optimization, pain management, and even exercise performance. I use my device every day for 15 minutes, especially during the winter months when there's not much sunlight. It increases my energy in the morning and makes my skin glow. Just check out the testimonials on the BoNTCHARGE website for the before and after pictures of other people. Most red light therapy devices don't have the right wavelengths of light, which might mean you're not getting the claimed benefits. BoNTCHARGE uses the exact wavelengths of light used in research, and they also have near-infrared light that's beneficial to the joints. Head over to bontcharge.com and use the code SIIM, SIIM, for a 15% discount. Your latest YouTube video on circadian rhythm as the next likely age marker was very insightful. Can you give a protocol for those who work nights? So yeah, that's an unfortunate situation. And, if you can't change the job, then you can still make it work. So if you're otherwise healthy, you're in good body composition, you eat a good diet, you sleep well otherwise, you exercise regularly otherwise, but the only thing bad in your life is, that you do night shift occasionally, then that's not the end of the world. It's still better than being without night shift, but being otherwise obese or not exercising, etc. So even though you do night shift, it's not going to completely eradicate other things that you do for your health. So you need to optimize just the other things, the other fundamentals. Get your body composition in check. Don't become overweight and obese. Do some exercise, with cardio and weights. Don't necessarily do a lot of exercise in the nighttime or when you're about to do night shift. Don't just wreck yourself at the gym before that. So try to exercise on the days that you're off from the work, and otherwise just eat a healthy diet. When it comes to the night shift itself, then I would recommend not to eat during the night. Try to avoid eating during the nighttime. So even if you're awake, just don't eat massive meals, or especially don't eat junk food during those times. You can mitigate a lot of the harm on your metabolism and circadian rhythms by just not eating during the night. And when you wake up, or when you're about to go to bed in the morning after the night shift, then just try to get a good sleep. Even if it's going to make you wake up at 2 p.m. in the afternoon, then it's better to get the adequate sleep. And, it depends if you have another shift the next day, how long you should sleep. If you're going to have another shift the next day, then yes, sleep as long as you want. If you don't have another shift, then maybe sleep restrict yourself a little bit so that you can go to bed earlier the next day if you have an off day the following day. So yeah, just try to optimize your otherwise lifestyle. And there are a few supplements as well that could help. A lot of glycine and NAC, these antioxidants that support glutathione, that can help melatonin at the right time. As the xanthine omega-3s, lutein, zeaxanthin, they can protect your eyes, shield your eyes against the blue light if you're, obviously going to work under blue light during the night. So yeah, those are the ones I would take. And creatine after or during the sleep deprivation, during the night shift, that can improve your cognition and reduce the sleep pressure. Next question, are there any supplements to take before the sauna to enhance its effects? Yes, there's called the Hubbard protocol, and it's just niacin with sauna, and niacin increases flushing, increases vasodilation, so it can enhance sweating and potentially enhance like the microvascularization, etc. So the Hubbard protocol was done to promote detoxification, so you sweat more out. But you can also otherwise use it for enhancing the cardiovascular benefits. So yeah, niacin, like 100, 200, 300 milligrams of niacin before the sauna can enhance some of its effects. Now, you can also take some binders if you want to bind to some of the toxins that you excrete. But I don't think it's inherently necessary, because most of the detoxification effect from the sauna comes from sweating. So if you take chlorella or charcoal, then it binds to things in your gut, but it's not going to bind to. You're still gonna sweat out the heavy metals or microplastics, etc. So niacin is probably like the best one that you could take, and potentially some other blood flow enhancing agents like citrulline. Let's say you go to the gym, you take citrulline before the workout to increase blood flow. That also might promote some of the benefits from the sauna. Yeah, that will be the one I would take. Next question, do you think long-term caffeine use ages the brain, or can it be neutralized with proper recovery and nutrition? Well, if you look at observational data, then coffee consumption is associated with less brain aging and lower risk of Alzheimer's, lower risk of cancers, lower risk of heart disease, lower risk of hypertension. So, if caffeine were to be harmful for the brain, then you wouldn't see that, right? The same with smoking. Smoking is seen to increase the risk of heart disease, and it's seen to increase the risk of cancers and Alzheimer's, etc. So if smoking were to be good for you, then you wouldn't see that increased risk. So there are some things you can still take away from observational data because of the either the mismatch or the match between the observations and the mechanisms. So there's no causal link between no causal evidence for smoking and heart disease, but because the association is so strong and we have a mechanism, we can know that the risk is potentially causal, or it's very likely to be so. With caffeine, you don't see increased risk of Alzheimer's or neurodegeneration. In fact, it's the opposite. So yeah, I wouldn't say, the only way it could harm your brain aging is if it disrupts your sleep. You're chronically sleep deprived because of caffeine or because it keeps you up at night. That's the only way it could do so. So otherwise, there's no. There might be some differences between energy drinks and coffee, because the reason why coffee consumption might be associated with reduced risk of Alzheimer's and heart disease and cancer is because of the polyphenolic compounds. Maybe the caffeine doesn't have that big of a role. Maybe it's the polyphenolic compounds mostly in coffee and teas that explains that effect. In that case, the energy drinks with isolated caffeine or pre-workout supplements, maybe they might be harmful, but it's hard to say. There's no not enough data for the energy drink side of things. We do have enough data for the coffee and caffeine from coffee side of things, but isolated caffeine, I haven't seen enough evidence yet. Next question, can you really repay sleep debt, or is it permanent damage? Yes, you can. There was actually a recent study where this weekend catch-up sleep was seen to lower markers of aging and improve some other biomarkers as well. So yes, you can repay some sleep debt, at least based on the evidence. So like let's say you sleep short during the weekdays, you sleep 5-6 hours. Now it's obviously still going to have some long-term damage because you can't fully repay it, but you can mitigate some of the damage by sleeping a bit longer on the weekends. So if you just sleep, let's say 2 hours a night, then yeah, you probably can't make up for it entirely. You can only make up maybe an extra 1 or 2 hours of lost sleep. But but also not chronically. If you always sleep only 4 hours a night, then probably you're not going to be able to make up for it. If you sleep maybe a few nights or 4 hours or 5 hours, then yes, you can make up for that. Maybe not 100%, but the majority of it. Next question, what do you think of Urolithin A? So I have a video about Urolithin A, MitoPure specifically, which contains Urolithin A. And, my impression of it is that it's very overhyped and overpriced. You wouldn't be... I don't see a way how you could charge $120 a month for a supplement that's going to increase leg torque, leg strength and leg power slightly, something like 12% if I remember correctly. Because yeah, the data they showed didn't improve upper body strength, it didn't improve endurance, and it didn't improve body composition. The only thing was increased leg torque slightly. So paying $120 a month for that is not worth it in my opinion. Now, obviously, there's some speculative data about Urolithin A and animal research that it might have some longevity benefits, that helps to stimulate mitophagy, that clears out old mitochondria, but it's certainly not the only thing that can do that. There's many other compounds that also stimulate mitophagy, and exercise itself does that as well. So even if you just exercised, maybe add an additional zone 2 cardio, some extra exercise, you could probably get the same benefits compared to taking the Urolithin A, and the money you spend on Urolithin A could be spent much better on some other supplements. I would much rather take astaxanthin, omega-3s, glycine, melatonin, or taurine. They have a lot more evidence than Urolithin A at the moment. And astaxanthin and taurine and glycine, they also seem to extend lifespan in animals. So Urolithin A doesn't have a monopoly on the life extension either. So there's many other much cheaper supplements that have been seen to extend lifespan as well, and they have a ton more clinical data in humans showing various benefits for skin, metabolic health, exercise performance, etc. And the reason I think Urolithin A, or MitoPure specifically, is so expensive is because it's patented. It's patented compound, and it costs $120 a month because they have the monopoly on it. So it's kind of like a supplemental mini pharma situation, whereas astaxanthin, taurine, melatonin, omega-3s, lutein, zeaxanthin, etc., they're not patented. They're just generic supplements, and they're 10 times cheaper. Are the people who are doing too much longevity stuff, fasting, cold plunges, snacks, etc., and actually accelerating aging? Well, certainly, yeah, you can do too much. Too much of anything can be harmful. Overtraining is harmful. Getting hypothyroid because of excess calorie restriction and excess fasting is harmful. Too much cold exposure is harm. Too much sauna can be harmful. So obviously everything has the right dose. Oxygen, you need oxygen to live, but excess oxygen is harmful. You can die. Same with water, same with food. Everything has a sweet spot. And I think probably the mindset in longevity space comes from a lot of, let's say, tech bros or crypto bros as well. If they get into longevity, then in that field, just doing more gets you better results. in business, doing more gets you better results, and just grinding through gets you better results in business in most cases. But in health, it's not always the case. In health, there's the hormetic sweet spot that gives you the best results. Not too much, not too little, just the right amount. Because in health, if you do more, if you add stacking things up, then you potentially will harm the body. So how much would be too much depends a lot on the individual. Some people can tolerate a lot of stress, and it's not going to be harmful for them at all, whereas others have a lower stress resilience, they have a weaker immune system, or just poorer metabolic health or fitness. So it all depends on the individual of how much is too much. But even then, the most resilient and most strongest of people they can still experience harmful effects if you do too much. So what are some signs you need to look out for? With exercise is that if you're always sick, you're not progressing in your training, you're keeping the same level all the time, or you're getting some joint pain and kind of just injuries, then that can be a sign of too much. When it comes to saunas, too much can be you're losing a lot of electrolytes, you're getting cramps, you're just sleep begins to suffer as well. Your just skin, you become very dehydrated. Those things can be happening with too much sauna. Too much cold usually goes along the lines of your thyroid begins to suffer. You just feel cold all the time despite getting out of the cold. So all those things can be from excess cold and pain sensitivity and those things as well. Brittle nails, brittle hair, kind of this flaky skin or something like that can be a sign of lower thyroid, which can also come from too low calorie intake, protein restriction, too much fasting, etc. So obviously, there are a lot of signs that you can experience when you're doing too much. But obviously, the inadequate side of things can be equally as bad. If you're not doing any form of exercise, you're just eating whatever, etc. You're not getting any of these beneficial stressors, then your body resilience will also be somewhat weaker. So you do need some moderate amounts of physical movement and activity, moderate amounts of dietary restriction, moderate amounts of let's say cold or heat exposure as well. Ideally, it's not. I think the cold and heat are somewhat like mandatory, but at least some form of physical movement. If you stop moving, you stop doing physical activity, then especially after the age of 50, then your physical function is going to drop off a cliff, especially if you've not maintained physical activity. So yeah, obviously, too much can be too much. With accelerated aging, then depends on how far are you taking it, and because arguably calorie restriction is one of those things that has been seen to extend lifespan in animals most consistently. Yeah, it's not a pretty life, it's not an enjoyable life, but maybe it will still extend your lifespan. But in humans, obviously, you need to take into account the risk of frailty and other infections. The calorie restriction studies are done in a more isolated environment, so mice aren't going to these mice or these other life forms, they're not exposed to external pathogens to just isolate the variables. So in humans who are in a free world, you need a strong immune system. And if you're calorie restricted too much, then your immune system will be weaker. So there's a trade-off you need to keep in mind. So I think, probably excess calorie restriction is not the most optimal for long-term in humans, especially also when we consider the association between muscle mass and bone density and longevity. Next question, any tips how to avoid the wake up after 4 hours of sleep? I go to bed at 9:30 p.m. but get up around 3 a.m. and can't get back to sleep. Yeah, so I did a video about it where I talked about glycine and slow release melatonin and just emptying your bladder before going to bed, etc. All those things can be a reason why you wake up. And there's additional reasons why you might wake up. They can be stress related, they can be just a habitual. So one problem with sleep is that it's very habitual. If you're always waking up at 2 a.m. or whatever the time is, even 5 a.m., then that's what your body will do. It just habituates to that. It develops a certain rhythm around that behavior. And even if you don't do it like super long, even if you do it for a few days or few weeks, then your body will quickly adapt to that new rhythm. So whatever the worst case thing to do is to just reinforce that pattern and reinforce that rhythm. So you need to just even like try to force yourself just to stay in bed, because chances are if you stay in bed for another 5, 10, 15 minutes, then chances are you're just going to fall back asleep and you'll sleep another hour. That's at least what I've experienced myself in the past when might have woken up again slightly earlier, 4 a.m., 5 a.m. Instead of getting up and going to work, I just force myself to stay in bed for another 15 minutes. Maybe I listen to some music that usually helps me to fall back asleep. So anything that gets you to stay in bed and get to fall back asleep, that can relearn this pattern that your body will, okay, it's 4 a.m. Although I woke up, I'm going to go back to sleep. That's what you need to do. Another reason could be blood sugar issues. So if your blood sugar goes low, your brain wakes you up. That's a common reason for that. And in the morning, you've been fasting for already several hours, so your blood sugar could be low. Things like kiwis before bed, or just even like MCT oil or something that has ketone bodies, that if you lack metabolic flexibility, that is. If you're otherwise healthy and you have good metabolic flexibility, then you should be able to tap into burning fat and ketones during your sleep, even if you ate carbohydrates for dinner. But people who have poorer metabolic flexibility, poor insulin sensitivity, poor metabolic health, then they tend to struggle with that. That's like one hallmark of poor metabolic flexibility, that not able to switch into ketosis during the night, which should happen naturally. So you can support that with maybe some MCT oil before bed. Or if you're semi-metabolically flexible, then you can also take kiwis, for example. There's research that kiwis help with sleep duration and sleep quality. But it can probably also be some other like lower glycemic fruits or carbohydrates. Next question. How many milligrams of sodium do you consume each day? I assume it should be higher for people who work out and do the sauna. So personally, I don't quantify my sodium intake. I don't really actually salt my food either. I don't drink electrolytes, at least not regularly. I might do it occasionally. And, if I were to guess, then my sodium intake is probably maybe, something around 2,500 milligrams a day. Because, I don't like salt my food. Yes, certain foods have salt. If my wife cooks the food, she salts the food usually. I don't myself. I don't know, like never got into like a salt thing, or I'm not like a salt connoisseur or gourmand. But my salt intake is actually quite low compared to, given the fact that I sauna quite often and I exercise regularly. And I think that I don't have any problems with muscle cramping or electrolyte imbalance because of eating carbohydrates. So eating carbohydrates, you release insulin, and insulin is a hormone that also helps to maintain electrolytes and maintain hydration. So carbohydrate refers to hydration. So with higher carbohydrate intake, you're better hydrated in that sense, thanks to insulin. You maintain electrolytes better, hold on to them. And on a low carb diet, that's the opposite. You have lower insulin, you excrete more electrolytes, and thus you can experience more brain fog and more muscle cramping, etc. Over time, you might adapt to it, but with a higher carbohydrate intake, I've noticed that I need less salt, less electrolytes, and I never really got into. I never felt the need that I need to just add a ton of salt or electrolytes to my own water or to my own foods. And if I were to guess, then maybe 2,000, 2,500 milligrams. So definitely on the lower end of sodium, because I just naturally don't salt it that much. And the only sodium I get are from some other foods that, pre-packaged, or my wife salts the food or something like that. I do like to consume some mineral waters every once in a while, like a carbonated, nice mineral water. I do consume those occasionally, but not every day, a few times a week. Next question. What's your take on using sleep supplements like magnesium, glycine, or taurine nightly? Can they blunt natural sleep regulation long term? There's definitely no evidence that I'm aware of that magnesium would, or taurine or glycine would blunt your natural sleep regulation or make you sleep worse if you stop taking them. That they definitely don't work like that. Magnesium mostly helps with sleep if you have low magnesium status, and it then helps with stress regulation or replenishes the magnesium status, which then supports your nervous system regulation, supports certain neurotransmitter production, etc. But, it doesn't, there's no negative feedback loop when it comes to sleep, the same way it is with testosterone, for example. If someone were to inject testosterone, their natural testosterone would stop, because there's a negative feedback loop. The brain detects that it doesn't need to increase natural testosterone production. It's not the same with magnesium or glycine or taurine, because your body doesn't produce those things to begin with. Glycine it makes in small amounts, but your body doesn't make magnesium endogenously. So it's a different scenario. There's a lot of fear that melatonin supplementation would stop natural melatonin production, but there's no evidence for that either. And And it's also not applicable, this negative feedback loop with melatonin, because melatonin isn't a hormone that's always in your blood and in your body, such as testosterone is. Yes, there is a circadian fluctuation in testosterone, but there's always testosterone in your bloodstream. With melatonin, it's not really the case, or at least it's there might be some minuscule amounts of melatonin in your blood, but it's not like something that has a circadian rhythm similar to testosterone. Melatonin is mostly regulated by light cycles, maybe food intake, etc. So it's not working the same way as testosterone. So absence of blue and green light helps with melatonin production, and not eating increases also melatonin production in the gut. So certain is like infrared light radiation does that as well. So there are many moments during the day where you can experience an increase in melatonin. So theoretically, that would also suppress natural melatonin production at nighttime, but that's not the case. Even if you get exposed to sunlight during the daytime, that helps with mitochondrial melatonin. It doesn't suppress your natural melatonin production at night. In fact, it actually enhances it and supports it. And the studies that are out there about very large dose melatonin intake, 50 milligrams and above, they haven't seen suppression of natural melatonin production. So yeah, definitely wouldn't worry. I think the bigger risk is a psychological dependence. So if you always take melatonin for sleep, you think that you need to take melatonin to fall asleep properly. And as I just alluded earlier, sleep is very habitual and pattern oriented. It's very psychological. You have a lot of psychological factors that influence how well you sleep, how long you sleep. Even just like I mentioned earlier, that if you always wake up at 4 a.m., then that's what your body will do. It will wake you up at 4 a.m. If you rewire that pattern to wake up later, then you will stick to that new pattern. And the same with melatonin. If you always take melatonin, you think you need to take melatonin to fall asleep, then that's what's going to happen. It's kind of like self-placebo effect. You think you need it. But there's no physiological blunting of natural melatonin production, if that makes sense. Next question. How much longevity is just keeping inflammation low versus actively repairing cellular damage? So yeah, that's an interesting question. Obviously, we don't have a solid answer to what drives aging and what is this like sole thing responsible for longevity. In humans, it's quite complicated. There's a lot of psychological, physiological, and environmental factors that determine how long someone will live. There's a luck involved. Genetics is involved quite a lot. But yeah, obviously inflammation is one of the hallmarks of aging. And I think it is pretty reasonable to say that high inflammation also drives aging. So people who have high inflammation, chronic inflammation, because of mostly, let's say, obesity, poor metabolic health, diabetes, insulin resistance, sleep restriction, just environmental inflammatory factors like air pollution, heavy metals, all those things. All of those things will drive the aging process as well. So smoking causes a lot of inflammation, and we can say pretty surely that smoking accelerates aging as well. And there is some evidence that with age you see an increase in inflammation. So the healthiest 80-year-old, they can still have slightly higher inflammation compared to the healthiest 20-year-old because of natural process of aging. I think it's not always. Of course, you can have 80-year-olds who have low inflammation and 20-year-olds with high inflammation, but with all things being equal, you would see that an 80-year-old has worse glutathione status, worse melatonin levels, worse antioxidant defense, and higher inflammation as a baseline. Is it the only thing that matters? No, there's many other factors that drive aging and contribute to that. Keeping your inflammation low is one of the easiest thing and like just a safe bet to do for your longevity, because inflammation is driving all chronic diseases. It's associated with all chronic diseases, and drives atherosclerosis, drives neurodegeneration, increases risk of cancer, shortens telomeres, all those things. So yeah, just keeping your inflammation as low as possible is one of the easiest things and safest things you can do to your longevity. You can measure it with CRP, keeping CRP low, keeping IL-6 low, TNF alpha low, and just having a healthy lifestyle, keeping your visceral fat low, keeping body composition normal, sleeping normally, etc. Actively repairing cellular damage. So that's, I think, a bit harder problem. And, DNA damage, cell senescence, all those things are also one of the hallmarks of aging. And again, it's pretty reasonable to say that if you drive higher amounts of DNA damage, you get exposed to radiation in high amounts. You just get exposed to high amounts of UV damage, or just DNA damage in excessive amounts, some toxins, etc. Then yes, it's reasonable to say that you also accelerate aging by doing that. So the short answer to that is, yes, you want to just minimize unnecessary damage and repairing the damage with your body's antioxidant defense and repair mechanisms. But even if you do that, even if you keep your inflammation as low as possible, even if you support all these repair pathways, I don't think it's enough to fully transform longevity to make people live decades longer. There's a lot more other things that we don't realize or don't understand yet. So there's a lot of like evolutionary programs, different genes. So I think epigenetics is also quite influential. So it's not just inflammation. If you keep your inflammation low, you keep your DNA damage low, you'll still age because of the natural process of the human body that's mostly genetic and in some ways evolutionarily selected for, and just part of the human physiology. And the last question is, do you fight the urge to binge, or is your will good enough? Well, personally, I don't have any problems with food. I have a very healthy relationship with food. I don't binge, or I never go into a situation where I can't control my food intake or something like that. I generally just eat a healthy diet. If I want to eat something unhealthier, I want to have birthday cake or some pizza or something like that, then I do it. I don't see like a problem with that. My health doesn't suffer because of that. I have, good biomarkers. I sleep well. I have good body composition. I have good relationship with food. And I do think that, it's healthy to have certain, let's say, freedom about food intake as well. So you should never feel, I guess, anxious about food. Like, oh my God, does this food have seed oils? Does it have gluten? Or, something like that. Or, oh my God, they only serve birthday cake here. I'm going to binge, or I'm not going to eat anything, or something like that. I think it's not a healthy place to be mentally. And I think it's important to have a relationship with food where you're confident in your own ability to, even if you eat unhealthy food for a moment, you're confident in your ability that, who cares? Tomorrow I'll just be back on my healthy food and healthy diet. Because you realize that even like a single cheat meal or a single bite, even like a bite of unhealthy food, is not going to have any long-term negative effects on your health. As long as you don't go into some binge eating event, then it's not going to have long-term negative side effects on your health. You can eat a birthday cake, zero long-term effects on your overall metabolic health, overall longevity. Now, there might be some individuals who it does have negative effects, especially certain people with have allergens towards certain foods, dairy, gluten, grains, whatever it is. If you have allergens to certain foods, then yes, it can be harmful. If you don't have allergens, you have good insulin sensitivity, good metabolic health, you're lean, then eating something unhealthy is not going to be harmful. So you can think of it like think of it the same way as like a bank account. If you have a ton of money in your bank account, then buying, like some sort of a luxury item or something that is practically useless, like you don't need it, but you just buy it because you like it, something collectible or whatever it is, then you have extra money in the bank account, so you don't have to worry about it. If you're broke, or if you have limited money, then yes, you need to be more careful with how you spend the money, and you can't spend money on unnecessary things. But if you have a lot of money, which in this context is you have very good metabolic health, you have very good body composition, you're otherwise healthy, then there's no issues because you have extra reserve, extra bank account, extra like money in the bank. But if you have worse metabolic health, you're already obese, you have poor relationship with food, etc., then in your case, yes, maybe eating the birthday cake is not the most suitable thing. But ultimately, you want to end up in a situation where you can take a bite of the donut and not eat the rest of the donut. Because there's risk that, okay, if someone eats a bite of something unhealthy, they eat a bite of a donut, they're going to eat the entire thing. They're not going to eat only the donut, but they're also going to eat 7 other donuts. They're going to go to McDonald's after that. So that's the worst situation you want to be in, because you have a poor relationship with food, and you're not able to control yourself once the gates open, so to say. The healthy relationship is that, okay, I'm going to eat this piece of whatever food. Yeah, it tastes good, but it's not healthy for me. Who cares? I'm going to put it back, and I'm able to go back to my routine after that. That's like the mental mastery and the relationship we want to have with food. Not being 100% perfect, I don't think that's the healthiest mentally. And it's also not, you're not actually disciplined. It's easy to say no to the entire thing. It's much more harder to take a bite and put it back. So to say, that requires a lot more discipline. So yes, if you're struggling with metabolic health, say no to the entire thing because it's easier. But if you're otherwise healthy, then you can eat it. You can take a bite, you can put it back, or whatever it is. You can eat more if you even like, but you know that the next day you go back on track. So I think that's in like the health and nutrition space is what often gets forgotten about. So yeah, I have a very good relationship with food. In the past, it might have not been that case. In the past, I was more like, I'm going to say no to the entire thing because it's easier. But now, I can eat a piece of donut, put it back, and I have no issues with it. And my metabolic health has actually improved, or, it's not because of that, but because I've improved my metabolic health with an otherwise more balanced diet and more balanced workout routine, I'm able to do that. And because of improving the diversity in my diet, I've improved my mental health and I've improved my metabolic health as well in the process. Whereas in the past, if I said no, one of the reasons I said no was because I was afraid it's gonna make me gain weight, or it's gonna, give me diabetes or something like that, which is obviously absurd. But yeah, in the past, saying the no, I was in a worse metabolic health than I am now. And taking a bite of the donut and putting it back, or eating a piece of cake, doing it now hasn't degraded my metabolic health. I'm in better metabolic health than I was in the past, and in better body composition as well. I'm lean year round without any problems, without counting calories, without, feeling deprived. It's actually hard for me to gain body fat right now because I'm so satiated, and I don't feel deprived of anything, if that makes sense. So yeah, I'm gonna wrap it up. If you have any other future questions, then turn on the notifications and pay attention to the community tab, where I'll pop a post where you can ask the questions. All right, thanks for watching this video. Make sure to click a like and subscribe. My name is Siim. Stay optimized, stay empowered.